Call the Public Service Committee meeting. Please stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3, adoption of the agenda.
Romano adopts the agenda.
Support Van Sickle.
Please vote.
Commissioner Ganem, did your vote come through for you? If you want a voice vote, I can add it in.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 10-0.
Item number 4, public participation. Anyone from the public wish to speak on any item that's on the agenda? Anyone from the public? Anyone from the public? I can't see the signs in the way here. I'll close public participation. Thank you. Item number 5, presentation, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Public Works Office, Lake St. Clair study update. Motion to receive and file.
Support Van Sickle.
Any discussion? Candace?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and all the commissioners, thank you so much for the gracious invitation to join with you and give you an update on our, well, there's a long term for this stuff, but I still call it the Lake St. Clair Muck, as it looks like muck. And it's, as you know, I came before this board about a year ago, asked for $200,000, which you agreed to, for a $400,000 contract that we've signed with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So each of us, Macomb County is paying half, the Army Corps is paying the other half, although we are heavily utilizing what is known as ERDIC, which is their big research and development area down in Vicksburg, Mississippi, with all of their brain trust down there. We've got some of their brain trust up here today because I thought we're a year into this, and they happen to be in town this week, and they're doing some additional sampling. This muck, as you know, we're trying to figure out what's causing it, what is it, and if we have to live with it, what do we have to do? And if there's a way to mitigate it or eradicate it, we need to figure out, first of all, what is it? It's really wreaking havoc in a lot of areas along Lake St. Clair. So I have a very short video, which I think is about 1.5 minutes or something. Play the video. This video was taken last fall. We were taking samples out on the lake. We're out here today as I have some staff members, and we are taking samples of this lingbaya, as they call it. That's what the scientists call it. I call it muck, okay? And we're trying to figure out what this stuff is. We had the Army Corps of Engineers who we're entering into a partnership with. They're paying half, we're paying half, but we're using all their research folks to study this lingbaya that is really in different, I always use the term, it's sort of in little armpits along the lake where the water is stagnant, where it doesn't have a real good water flow. And so it's not like the duckweed that we remember when we were kids. It's some sort of new phenomena. It's organic. We've noticed it now for the last 10, 15 years. And it's in these areas, as I say, where the water is sort of stagnant. So we did take samples back in the spring, I think May, and we're just going to take a couple more samples out here today and send them down to the lab so we can see what's happening during the course of the year. We are at the just off of the Mount Clemens Water Treatment Plant, which is at the foot of Crocker and Jefferson, essentially, in Harrison Township. And again, we're looking for samples of this lingbaya. We just took a sample right along the shoreline here, and guess what we found? This is it. This stuff is weird. Look how weird it is. And it's like little pebbles, right? Little, I don't know how to explain it. It's very odd. Anyway, we're taking this stuff and we are putting it in our sample bottle here. And we're going to be sending these samples down to the Army Corps of Engineers. They've got a research lab actually in Mississippi that we are working with. And they wanted to see how this stuff was at this time of the year. But I mean, this is the weirdest stuff. It almost looks like, I'm sorry, right now it looks like cat hairballs to me. I don't know how to explain it. It's very, very weird. You know, there's like little pellets of it almost. Anyway, it gets very, very, you can imagine the thickness of it, how it gets in different areas. And, you know, there are a number of boat wells along Lake St. Clair where this stuff is just packed in, or you see it in different areas offshore here, I mean, right along the shore, I should say, where it packs it in, and it's very deep, and it's wide, it's thick, and, but it's a living organism. So what is it? What is causing this? We're not really sure, but that's why we're doing the study. We want to find out. So this is a picture about a year ago. This is at the boat launch on Lake St. Clair, right across from Fast Eddie's Drive-In, if you're familiar with that, along Jefferson here. You can see how this is all, what happens with this stuff is it just keeps coming ashore, and it actually vegetates. So it looks like it's land, right? So if you're a property owner, you can imagine, rather than being able to use your property, that was the year. Year has gone by. This is not the best picture, but you can see where it was and where it is in just a year. So it continues to migrate out and take more property. I guess this is just another shot of that. So anyway, with that, let me introduce Jeff Bednar, who is my environmental engineer, and he's really been sort of the lead on this and was also responsible for contracting, helping us contract with the Army Corps of Engineers. So he's going to talk a minute. He's going to introduce Elisa from the Army Corps of Engineers, and she has a little PowerPoint she'll go through and tell you where they are after a year, what they found so far.
Chair, Commissioners, it's a pleasure to be able to stand before you today and present on what we found. I think it's great to start off with Commissioner Miller's video where we say, well, what is this stuff? And I brought with us today Alyssa Eck, as well as Greg Mossoff. Greg is with the Detroit District. He's our project manager who helps collaborate ideas and turn them into action. And Alyssa is part of that action team from down at Erdek in Mississippi. Been out working with Alyssa the last 3 days to collect more data, but I won't steal her thunder, so let me just introduce Alyssa to you.
Hello, Alyssa Eck, Army Corps of Engineers. My background's in environmental toxicology, and so what my training's in is understanding how biological, which this is, ends up in an environmental system, how it's transported around, and we're going to be looking at the management of it. So we've called this organism here a number of different names. The reason why it's named a number of different things is a number of years ago, how they would identify organisms is based off of what it looks like. So they could only really go off of like physical, visual characteristics of it. And now as we're getting more, technology is getting more advanced, we're now using genetic techniques to look at these organisms. And so the name has changed a number of times. It was called Plectonema, it was called Limbia or Limbia, Muck is a common name, now it's Microceria woolii. So this organism is actually more closely related to bacteria than it is a plant. So think of more like, I guess, bacteria than grass or trees or flowers or anything like that. It's a single-celled organism. So the microscopic image where the cells are kind of blown up, I don't know if I can. Okay. Oh, well, you guys have different screens as well. So, so I have actually an arrow pointing to an individual cell, and it kind of looks like pennies that are stacked in a coin roll. That's kind of a good way to describe it. On the outside, it has a sheath, and sometimes that sheath can have bacteria and fungi and sediment, other things around it. So this study was kicked off in December of 2022. And just a little bit of background about this organism in Lake St. Clair. It was first identified in May of 2010 along the western portion of Lake St. Clair by the Metro Park. Since then, statewide surveys have identified that the growths have increased and becoming more severe in some locations. And so that was one of the impetus for bringing on the Corps of Engineers and the Engineer Research and Development Center to start to look at this. Some of the impacts that it has, as you can tell, pretty unsightly growths. It can smell pretty horrible on the shoreline. So a lot of people who have properties there are rightly so unhappy with the cyanobacteria that's on the shoreline. So yeah, so here's another photo of kind of how the mats build up along the shoreline, and you can see the very start of someone's very nice shoreline property where, you know, would have been a very nice hangout location, and now it smells horrible and is just totally inundated by the cyanobacterium. There's some locations where they have looked at managing the cyanobacterium. And what they've done is physically removed it. The Metro Park Beach is a good example of where they've hauled it onto the shore and let it dry out. But there are issues where after they remove it, it comes back pretty much within a couple months. So that was another reason to start to look, can we more scientifically identify where this stuff is coming from and better ways, more informed management. So the project's objectives were to identify where is Microcereolii in Lake St. Clair, identify where the sources of it could potentially be, why is it ending up on shorelines, what is causing the cyanobacterium to accumulate, and what can be done to manage it. So this was a 2-year study. The first year, we got together a number of stakeholders. This included state agencies, academic institutions. Wayne State was there to talk about what they felt were research priorities for this project. And we did some confirmatory field sampling the first year, looked at the literature to see what's the current state of the science on this alga, and compile this information in a couple different resources. One, we hope to have, we hope that it's pretty, it has a number of really interesting graphics. It's more interactive. So we think that that would be a really good public-facing document. And then we also have a more technical document that includes citations and information about the current state of the science on the algae. And then this year, we're conducting field sampling to fill a number of data gaps that weren't evident from what we found in the literature, and to develop what we call an adaptive management plan. So the tools that we're testing, evaluating this year to identify where is M. wolii located in Lake St. Clair, we are using, pretty state-of-the-art tools for the science, as well as, a lot of these tools haven't been used for cyanobacterium, which is the larger term used to describe this organism, or it has not been used for this specific organism, Microcereolii. So we really need to test out first if these tools are feasible for this site, if these tools are feasible for this organism, so that we can move forward in the future with management of this algae. So a couple tools we're looking at using are environmental DNA sampling. So this tool has been used for invasive species. Asian carp is a good example. Where the idea is you could collect a sample of water, dip a cup of water in, you extract the DNA on a filter, do a number of analyses, and it can tell you if, in theory, the organism is present upstream of where you sampled. So that's the concept, but it hasn't been evaluated for Microceria woolii. There's a number of factors that can impact how well it works, so that's what we're evaluating this year. We're also using an autonomous underwater vehicle, the yellow torpedo-looking device that you see in the figure. That's an eco-mapper. So we have cameras strapped to it, lights strapped to it, and something called side scan sonar strapped to it as well. And so this is going to allow us to take images of the lake bed at different levels within the water column. So another tool that we're looking at is using satellite imagery. We have a satellite called Worldview, which is tasked to fly over the lake while we're here sampling this week. So we have opportunities to collect a number of samples or a number of images of the lake and analyze those images. And then the other thing that we're going to be looking at is biomass modeling. So biomass is just a term to describe all this organic material on the shoreline. We're going to be quantifying how much biomass there is there in some select locations, and then doing some methods, techniques to try to understand how quickly that biomass is increasing as well as degrading. So there's two processes that are going on here in a very simplified view of the lake that you're seeing. One is the algae is alive, so it's growing, and then there's some cells that are actually dead, and so those are degrading. So to understand what that biomass represents, you need to understand those two rates, those two processes. The other question is what's causing Microceria woolii to grow. So while we're out sampling, we're collecting water samples as well as sediment samples to assess specific nutrients, specifically looking at nutrients that are available to this cyanobacterium. There's specific species of nitrogen and phosphorus. So in addition to organisms having species, elements also have species, nitrogen and phosphorus. We're also looking at light attenuation in the water column, and then correlation. We're going to use this to develop correlations between these factors and Microceria woolii to better understand what factors are really driving it to grow on the shore. The last question was about how we're planning on managing, how we're going to develop an adaptive management plan for Microceria woolii. And so a part of that is understanding the nutrients within the system. Are nutrients a really key driver for Microceria woolii? If that's the case, there's a number of things that you can do to sequester nutrients or to limit nutrients within the system. And then we're also going to be evaluating US EPA registered algicides that potentially could be used to decrease the biomass of Microceria woolii. And those type of experiments have been evaluated in the lab. There's many years of methods for how those tests are done in the lab. So in summary, this first year, we did a literature review as well as some initial sampling to understand the situation a little bit better. And then this year, we're conducting field sampling to really tease apart what these initial questions we had were that were really data gaps in the literature. And then the big item that we have that coming out of the second year is going to be developing an adaptive management plan. This is the story map that we developed from the first year. If you want to scan it, you can see information about the study, a lot more detail than I gave you here today. I can go back if people are, I see some people still scanning. And then we also have a couple technical documents. We have a technical note. This is a document that the Army Corps of Engineers uses. One of the great things about these notes and reports that the Army Corps of Engineers develop is they have a permanent location on the internet, so you can always find them and go back to them. So we have a technical note that we developed last year, as well as a more detailed technical report that has basically the current state of the science for the cyanobacterium, everything that we know about it in the literature. And then we've been engaged in a lot of activities to try to communicate this issue to the larger audience, the larger US, the scientific community as well. So we've participated in a number of webinars as well as conferences to communicate this research. All right, thank you. I think I have a couple minutes for questions.
Any questions?
So I think one of the things, the takeaway here is keeps talking about adaptive management. I mean, it's not going away. And if you're one of the property owners looking at this stuff every year, gathering more and more steam there, you gotta figure out what to do with it. So whether or not it needs to be dredged, whether there's some, what do you call them, aquicides?
Algicides.
Algicides, whether there's some sort of treatment that could happen there as well. I think that's really probably what we're looking for next year. I know there's a number of property owners that think there's going to be a magic bullet here with all of this. That's probably not happening, but it is it's a new kind of a thing. It's organic. I mean, relatively new within the last 20 years to our lake, and it's not going away. So we got to figure out, as I say, what is it? Which is what they're looking at. What is it? What's causing it? I mean, if you look at some of the areas where it is, this is my personal belief. I'm only speaking on behalf of myself. I think a lot of the combined sewer overflows that come out of Oakland County come down the Clinton River and also the spillway, and you can see where this stuff is at. That's not the only reason, but it's a big contributing factor in my uneducated opinion. But you can just look at a map and see what's going. That stuff it's being fed by something. So zebra mussels have certainly changed the ecology of this lake as well. And different things are happening now. So anyway, but we just wanted to give you an update of where we are. I mean, you're paying for the study. And I will say we had a meeting the other day at the ISD 2 days ago with sort of all the people from the state were there, from EGLE and Army Corps of Engineers. There were a number of other sort of stakeholders, if you will. We had quite a large group there talking about this whole thing for an entire morning. So there is a lot of interest with a number of people about what is this stuff. So.
All right, Commissioner Brown?
Thank you, and thank you for the excellent report, comprehensive report. A lot's been done in a year's time since the Board of Commissioners funded this. I mean, we've been hearing complaints about this issue for a very long time, and we've got people now in place in government doing something about it, which is refreshing, though there's a lot of work to be done. What can we do now? We got homeowners, their properties are plummeting in value. They got a stinking mess in front of their place. Will the Corps of Engineers permit them to dredge it and take it away themselves?
Yeah, I don't know if that's your.
Well, that's
not
a
really
Corps
your
of
department,
Engineers question.
But yeah,
Oh, yeah, I was
Oh,
gonna mention.
Greg, yeah.
Greg Mouseoff from the Detroit District. I think that would be more of a question for the regulatory group in my office that permits dredging of this material. I did talk to the state on the Tuesday meeting that Candace mentioned, and they said as long as it's not on the bottom, they're allowing homeowners to dredge it without a permit because it's not considered bottom land, it's not touching, so I
Yeah,
think.
because the issue of Phragmites is a whole, very familiar with the permitting process with that.
Yeah.
And that's a different animal. This stuff's laying on the shoreline and just stinking up the place. And, maybe it has some, back in the day in the 90s, we dredged all that stuff out. We put it in farmers' fields for fertilizer because there's a lot of fertilizer in that stuff that we
Yes.
dredged out of there. This is probably very similar, I'd imagine. And
It
it may
does.
have a use.
in my personal opinion, again, it needs to be dredged. If I was one of those, I mean, I live on the lake in a condo association. We dredged our harbor, and we had a lot of it in there, and everybody paid. We dredged it out. We have aerators in the harbor all the time that we're trying to keep the water sort of moving so it doesn't stagnate there. But it's a constant thing. So you need to dredge it, but if there's some type of treatment as well, that would be good. So, but some of these, I mean, you've been out, you've seen some of the homeowners, they have these beautiful boat wells out on the lake, and they're completely.
It's terrible. It's
they
terrible.
Can't use them. It looks like it's land now instead of a boat well.
We're losing access to our lake.
Well, it's only in certain areas. That, I think we really have to say that. There's only a few areas that are really impacted by this stuff. There was some, I hate to use the term the armpit, I don't know how else to explain it. Areas where the water is very stagnant,
Doesn't
right? Where it's not
circulate.
flowing. So we saw some of that at Metro Beach, and of course, they just dredged it out. They've been dredging it out where all the people do their kiteboarding and everything, that whole area back in there. They get it every year. They dredge it out, et cetera. The launch site that we're taking these pictures from, I sit on the Michigan Waterways Commission. This is one of our launch sites for the state DNR here. And the reason they had to spend millions of dollars changing the configuration of the launch area was because, you know, every year they were out there dredging this stuff with front end loaders and, you know, couldn't even get out to fish. And that's one of the busiest boat launches in the state of Michigan. So,
Now, the homeowners see it when it's dead and close to shore, but how far out does it grow? What depths does it grow at? Is it all
That is
depths?
what we were out looking for these last 3 days. So that's what that eco mapper was out mapping. What is the extent of this? And there were some just like hand samples, not with a hand, but this giant claw that goes down underwater. And they were finding those out into the lake. We have to pull the data back in, put it into a computer and process it. But
What about the shipping channel? They down that deep?
we did not go that far out. So with these transects, we stayed more in, you know, kind of the Metro Beach down to, well, we went as far as like 11.5 mile. But
It
so
is
just in that cove.
It is encouraging that the Corps is looking at things that treated in the water. I mean, it's not unusual. I mean, I've been in lakes where they've treated weed growth becomes crazy, right? And they've treated it over time, and they've been able to effectively manage the lake. The lake that I'm familiar with from my whole life had that happen. And so there's hope. There's hope that they could get this curve back.
Exactly.
But people can't wait, you know, they got issues right now laying on their beach. So glad to hear that it's a non-permitted use to scrape that off their beaches or off the front of their property and get rid of it. That's a positive thing. in the
Right.
short term.
And the concern is that there's a lot of accumulation because it hasn't been done, and it'll come back, you know, until we can figure out where all those sources are and what is the best way to manage it in the lake, if that's possible, or if there's other measures that can be done. Whatever
That's what
can
we're
be
paying
best
for
for
the
the
study.
residents, that's what we're doing. Yep.
That's good. We appreciate it. And we're glad to have the Corps as a partner. There's no better partner to have than the Corps and their vast resources across the country looking at our stretch of lake here. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Public Works Commissioner Miller, for your leadership on this. It's been long been an issue for you and for many of us. So we're glad that we're bringing attention to it. Maybe we can put a knife through this and get it done. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. I'm curious, is this the only place in the world that this exists?
No. So it's been identified along the eastern portion of the United States, all the way up into Canada.
In freshwater?
In freshwater, it's a freshwater species. There are locations where this cyanobacterium just lives a part of the natural ecosystem, but doesn't form this massive biomass. But there are a couple locations where it has. One is Kings Bay, Crystal River in Florida. Another one is Lay Lake in Alabama. And then there's a recent issue with it on the border of Virginia and North Carolina, that they're starting this process of figuring out how to manage it as well.
Since you said that it's more like a bacteria than a plant, is there any, when you dredge this stuff out and physically remove it, does that material have to be treated as a biohazard?
My understanding is currently right now, no. In the Metro Park, they've been removing it and they have it on terrestrial areas drying out. That's one of the things that we plan to look at as part of the study is potential risks of an action like that.
Because I was wondering about if they bury it or something in a landfill, if it could get into the groundwater as a bacteria.
You know, it has been, there's a lot of areas that have been dredged. They've been dredging this stuff already for years, right? Like I said, you know, this boat launch, right? The DNR staff has been dredging this stuff, and they have contractors as well. I mean, you never hear about anybody.
What do they do with it?
First you gotta dry it out. That's what they usually do. That's what I'm familiar with. They lay it out to dry it out a little bit. Otherwise, it just really takes up too much space in the dumpsters, right? So they dry it out a bit. Once it's dry, they take it to a landfill or whatever. As Don says, for years, they used to take it out on farmers' fields, right? Or things, I don't know if it was this, but dredge material for certain. But anyway, this, if the Corps allows you to dredge it, I don't know if your permitting would have to answer that, whether or not they'd have to take it to a landfill or.
Well, since you're not going down to the bottom, this almost seems like it's not really dredging. It seems like it's just sort of
Maintenance,
collection
yeah,
or something.
right.
I could see where the dredging materials could be good on a farmer's field because it has all the stuff settled, but this stuff, who knows what it is.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Nard?
Hi, Commissioner Van Sickle asked the questions that I wanted to ask. So I just have one. I'm looking at this, so is all of that, it looks like land, is that so that's not land, that's the stuff, that's that
That's the
stuff.
stuff, that's the muck. That's this, these little tiny round
Oh, my
pellets.
goodness,
all
really?
there, yes.
Okay, wow. Okay, that's all I had to ask. I just couldn't believe that, so,
Yeah.
wow, okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Romano?
Thank you, Chair. If you had a lot of rabbits out there, I'd say this was rabbit poop, because that's what it looks like.
It's poop.
Goose.
Oakland County poop.
That was a good
what I'm
presentation.
thinking.
And I'm not pointing fingers, I'm just asking. This stuff has been around for 10 years, 15 years? What has taken so long for somebody to wake up and say, hey, we got a problem here? With all the smart scientists we have that's been checking all this stuff, why hasn't something been done? Why are we waiting so long to do it? That would be my first question. My second question is, what happens if this gets on your skin?
Well, the only thing I'm gonna,
I need you up at the microphone if I may, Commissioner.
yeah, you know, as far as, this is what I just say, I mean, I know people that have been dredging this stuff, and I've never heard of anybody getting a rash or getting sick or anything, so I don't want to alarm the public unnecessarily here. I don't know, we're not sure exactly what it is, but it doesn't seem to be, you know, really too dangerous. More of a nuisance, really, I think, than anything. You know, the truth is, I mean, I'm the Public Works Commissioner. My department does not have jurisdiction over the Clinton River or Lake St. Clair or whatever. But yet, you know, someone has to step up here. I'm not saying it's just us. Obviously, all of you agreed to fund this study because it's impacting our community, right? So really, I'll tell you the truth, the state, you know, here's their boat launches are being impacted, and they just spent a bunch of money to change configuration. So, you know, I don't know why nothing has happened in the past. But anyway, we're looking to the future, right? We got to try to figure out what's what here.
Commissioner, I hear a lot of conversation, and incidentally, I go along. Commissioner Miller always comes up with a picture's worth 1,000 words, and it does work that way. I've never realized what it looks like, and then the video was even worse looking at that junk. But
I
again,
know you like pictures. That's why I bring them.
I hand that task to the Army Corps of Engineers. I mean, they got some smart people up there. Somebody needs a poke in the butt to get this moving along. I mean, there's a lot of conversation. We're doing studies. Get out there, get some scientists out there, break this stuff down, find out what it is, and let's get rid of it. That's all I have,
what we're doing.
Commissioner.
That is what we're doing. That's exactly what we're doing.
Time is of essence.
I'm going to tell you, Jeff and I went down to their Urdick facility in Mississippi. It's mind-boggling. It would knock your socks off, the kinds of things that they are involved with. Not just this, we went down to see how our project was doing, but we saw the tanks where the Asian carp, the guy that does all the Asian carp. Yeah, I mean, that was amazing. They've got these huge tanks with all these different Asian carps, and, well, you know, which could be, but, you know, a disaster for the Great Lakes. And, you know, they had an entire simulation of how they changed configuration of the Mississippi River and how all the sediment is coming out at the mouth of New Orleans and all this. It's really unbelievable what they're doing down there. So I have huge amount of confidence in the, as I say, the brain trust that we have on this particular contract.
Put you on as a supervisor, Ms. Miller, and I'm sure to get done a lot faster. That's all I got. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we're looking to the future, but just to go back a little bit, because you and I have seen this for a long time. When I was working for Candace, when she was in Congress, I was out, Candace was out at somebody's property, and you couldn't even walk on this stuff without getting stuck. There were homeowners there that tried, this was at the point where we were trying to identify what it actually was. It smelled awful. These folks couldn't open their windows that had these lovely houses on the water. They couldn't enjoy their property, and people were getting stuck. Kids were getting stuck. Adults were getting stuck. Horrible, awful situation. And at that point, we didn't even really know what it was yet because it was still so new. Now, fast forward to this. I'm so excited about this research project. This is fantastic to me. And as a research nerd, I pulled up your map. And of the states, there's 17 states that are affected in one way, shape, or form. Either it was identified or it's problematic. And there's 2 provinces. Of those states on the East Coast, there's 8 major East Coast ports. 6 of those states have this bacteria there. So I'm wondering if it's something coming in through these ports, you know, through the waterways, through these ships, you know, shipping channels, things like that. Just the gears are starting to turn. But it's great that we've funded this. We're going to continue to fund this, and we're going to continue this research because I'm fascinated by this, and I can't wait to see what comes of this because it is a serious problem, not only for our waterways, but for our land also, because it's just, I mean, look at that. You can't even see where the shoreline actually begins and ends. So I can't say enough. I'm so excited for this. Thank you for bringing everybody in for this presentation. It was fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Sabatini?
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Commissioner.
Hello.
I'm not a scientist either, but I agree with your analogy. I think you're spot on. So, you know, and thank you for standing up on this as we did. You see a problem, you have to solve it. And
Right.
this
What
was
are you
the
gonna
first
do?
step. So, kudos to you. You know, going back to, and I get your overflow reports as we all do, and I actually do read them because I think they're interesting. I think we're trying to make a change there. And what you've been able to do just, you know, since you've been the Public Works Commissioner is reducing it by 30%. I know when you were.
Not to interrupt you, but by the end of this year,
Oh, I know
by
that's
75%.
75%. I wrote it down because it just, I just read the email before this meeting. It was 75% with the new balloon holding capacity, which I thought was revolutionary in the sense of going to Plan B, because I liked Plan A, first of all, and I was quite shocked that the state denied us on that attempt because I thought that was a great idea and that would have really probably got you closer to 100%.
Yes.
But, you know, by doing those types of things, by us, you know, going and paying for the study and researching this, I think we're trying to solve the problem in a strategic way. But I agree with you. I think the problem is what we know it is. And the only way to solve it is what we're trying to do. So thank you for everything. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time and your interest. Thank you.
Please vote.
Do we have a motion? I don't know. Do we? Okay.
Yes, we did.
There was.
I'm missing a couple. Commissioner Ganem?
I voted.
Oh, it might just be delayed on my end. Commissioner Kraft? Motion passes 11-0.
Again.
Yeah.
We'll go to item number 6, department recommendations. Mr. Santo, couldn't you find something for XYZ?
We need a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Use the whole alphabet. I
We
mean,
do.
I was asking my
Mr.
staff to see if
Chairman,
they
you
could
need
come
a
up with
motion?
4 more items, but
Mr. Chairman,
I got
yes.
some suggestions.
motion to recommend to full board.
Support.
I would like to combine A through V.
Motion to recommend to full board A through V.
please.
And I apologize up front, my 22 items aren't as exciting or interesting as Microceria woolii, but
Hey, you
anyways.
get good pronunciation there.
Right.
Look at that.
I'm
He's
a
scientist.
quick study. And
He's
I don't
more
have
than
any
just an
photos,
engineer.
so Commissioner Romano, I'm sorry, I don't have any photos either, video. So item 6A is one of our annual programs. It's our special marking project, annual program. So asking contract approval for PK contracting in the amount of $134,130.01 for that program, which ties into item B, which is once again our 2024 annual longitudinal pavement marking program with PK contracting, with that contract in the amount of $951,352. And that is 100% McDorr money, our annual program funding. Item C, contract for Cipparrone Contracting. This is for our 2024 pavement preservation program regarding concrete. Total county cost is $2,687,600.78. This is once again a 100% McDorr annual program, seeking approval of that contract to move forward with that. Ties into item 6D, which is another annual 2024 pavement preservation project program. This deals with the HMA program in the amount of $3,090,951, and that would be with Proline Asphalt Paving Corp., who has done this program for us in the past over various years. Item E, which is a contract with Great Lakes Contracting Solutions. This is for Masonic Boulevard and Kelly Road intersection reconstruction. That's a total contract cost of $385,809.66. Our county cost, Department of Roads costs $192,904.83. That is a split, 50% McDorr, 25% cost to Fraser, City of Fraser, and 25% to the City of Roseville for that intersection improvement. Item F is a contract with Proline Asphalt Paving Corp. For Moravian Road rehabilitation from Shaner Road to Garfield Road. That is a total cost of $4,308,758.98. That is a 50-50 program, local agency project, so we split that in half. So our cost is $2,154,379.49. Item G is another contract with Proline Asphalt Paving Corp. For Kelly Road improvements from 15 Mile Road to South Nunley, north to South Nunley. It's a rehabilitation. That total project cost is $1,286,365. Our county cost, because that is a local agency project on a local road, which is a 60-40 split. So we take on the 40%, so our cost is $514,546. The remaining 60% is Clinton Township. Item H through item N, those are all associated with our subdivision reconstruct program, our annual program. So we offer up $2 million of match money per year to hopefully receive in $2 million of match funding for the construction or reconstruction of subdivisions within various communities. So all these are related to that program. As you can see, item H is in Clinton Township, item I is in Shelby, item J, Harrison Township, item K, Shelby again, L, Shelby, M, Shelby, and N, Harrison Township. So these are all projects that are submitted by the communities, by the townships for this program. They are vetted, they are made sure that they are submitted appropriately and meet the requirements of our program. And then we sit down and select within the budgetary tolerances the awarded projects and move forward with those. With N, that is a concrete program. That is with Harrison Township. That is in conjunction with a complete rehab, reconstruction of a section in that same subdivision. We offered to do a 60-40, 60% on the community, 40% on us as far as doing concrete patching. It's a kind of a mix of pavement surfaces in that subdivision. So a portion of it is asphalt, a portion of it is concrete. And the concrete was good enough where we didn't have to remove and replace it. We could do some patching. So we decided that we would be amenable to doing a 60-40 cost share with the community to get that concrete section repaired. item O actually is the contract for all that work, and that's with Springline Excavating LLC for the 2024 sub-reconstruction program. That overall total cost is $2,897,270.90. The county cost is $1,448,635.45. The remaining portions of the items P through V are another annual program that we have. This is the Northern Communities. This is our limestone program. So at Chesterfield, Richmond, Bruce, Lenox, Armada, Ray, and Washington. So we offer up 3 miles of gravel roadway to be re-limestoned or limestoned. We had one community only want 1.5 miles. That was Ray. So we put that up for offer to other communities, and Chesterfield had jumped onto that additional 1.5 miles. So we'll be getting 4.5 miles versus the 3 miles because of Ray Township. That program, once again, the communities pay for 10% of the material cost of the limestone and the brining, which is a dust control after we put it down. And the Department of Roads pays for the 90% of the remaining material costs and the application, which is the workers and the equipment to put it down. So if anybody has any questions on those, I'd be happy to answer those.
Commissioner Sabatini?
Thank you, Chair. Hey, Brian.
Afternoon.
Quick question in regards to subdivision limits. I thought the limits per community were $500,000 in total. Did we change that, or did we have just a $2 million limit? Whoever applies for it first, and you make the decisions?
It's per project, so it's not per community. So
Okay.
any one project can't go as far as our contribution of more than $500,000. So
Gotcha.
if it's $1 million project, then it's 50-50. If it's 1.2, then we're paying 500 and the community's paying 7.
Gotcha.
But it's per project, so it's not per community.
Okay.
limit.
And then, is there anything left in that fund, or is this the total amount for this year, the 1.4 that we're using Springline here for?
This is a total amount. We do an estimate for the project before we go out to bid, obviously. Line up projects that we think will fall under the budgetary constraints of this program. Sometimes we get a little better deal on the projects. At that point, it's tough to, because of the long process of the SAD, to add on from that point. So it's kind of, some years we're spending a little less, but some years we might spend a little more because the prices might come in a little higher. So on average, we try and hit that threshold of what we budget for. But sometimes we do get better pricing. Sometimes, if there's additional work that takes place, unknowns on a particular project, prices might go up. So even though the bid price, the initial price is lower, we might pay ultimately a little bit more in the end just because of extras or unforeseens. But this is what we had to work with.
Has the cement price come down? I know last year, the cement price was really high. Have the numbers as far as like the, cement and asphalt and actually the costs there, have they come down to help you with your budgets at all?
Those have been fairly consistent recently. Latter part of last year, those kind of normalized. Early in the year and the year previous, there was some scuttlebutt about cement shortages and such. I know MDOT really didn't come out with an official cement shortage correspondence or release. So we didn't see too much of a change as far as supply to our projects. But yeah, I got to believe that pricing, we've been getting pretty good pricing as far as our estimates and where the bid prices have come in. And we haven't seen anything exorbitant or extraordinary as far as pricing, as far as HMA or cement currently.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Brown?
The subdivision program, following up Commissioner Sabatini. So all the communities that submitted township or subdivision projects were approved, is that what you're saying?
We get more of an ask than we have
Met
funding.
the criteria.
Yes. So the ones that were submitted, traditionally, we've been getting more submittals in than we have budgetary funding for. So we obviously try and spread that out between communities. We ask for their top 3, I think. Sometimes we're able to get their 3 submittals and other times we're not. Some communities move forward and on this program, we had one community that had to back out on a project that was originally approved for this program, just because they didn't have the support of the community as far as the SED was concerned. So they need 50% or more than 50%. So, you know, it's kind of a work in progress as we get up to the actual bidding of it. But once again, when the numbers come in, all communities except for one utilize the SAD process, Special Assessment District process. Shelby is different, where Shelby contributes directly and does not go through the SAD to assess the residents. So sometimes we've been able to, when there's been a dropout, kind of late in the ballgame, we've been able to access Shelby because their process of funding is a lot shorter than the SAD process, and we can't hold up this big program because it takes all season. So, but we try and fill it as best as possible with funding that we have available.
Grateful for the limestone program. Most of my district, you know, is limestone, Commissioner. They don't have cement, but we appreciate the limestone programs. That's the next best thing, the limestone out, the cement. We appreciate it. On the going back to the line paving, longitude line paving, and we only had PK Construction was the only one that submitted a bid.
Yes.
There's a lot of companies on the street that do that. What's going on?
Actually, there's not as many as you think. It's a pretty unique and niche field, and there's not too many around other than PK that kind of do that amount of
It's a lot of work.
line marking. So it is kind of a unique field, and there's not a whole lot of contractors out there, at least in this area, that do that type of
Well, we
work.
put it on the mitten side. It goes across the whole state. So.
Yeah, I mean, PK does a great job, and a lot of them probably don't bid because they know that they're not going to be able to beat PK's numbers. But, I mean, it's open for everybody to bid on, but it is kind of a niche
But we
process.
bid it out was a significant thing, so that's important. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Romano?
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Brian. Well, listen, we were out in the hall, and you mentioned something that you had brought an intern to the meeting, so perhaps Master Santo would like to speak. You have something to say there, Mr. Santo?
Everyone, this is my youngest son, Matthew. He's in our summer intern program. We have about, I think, 10 college kids that work in our summer intern program throughout our department, whether it's finance that he's in, engineering department, traffic operations. We have some at our service centers. We have somebody assisting HR, but I believe we have 10 this year. So it's a great program for us to get summer interns and get people interested in what we do. Not only just repair potholes and plow salt, but we do a lot of other things within the road department. So, yes.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I got some ditches you could dig out, son.
Put them to work.
Commissioner Ganem.
Hi. My question is that for the road projects that you have for the 21 AA's and limestone, whatever you're going to use, Warren has a lot of roads that are still not paved. Can we put together a bid for the same type of rebate?
Well, the city of Warren has their own, they're a city, so they have their own Act 51 funds. So
Right.
the only roads in cities and villages that we have jurisdiction are our primary roads, which are all paved.
Oh, so it's primary only, not residential?
No, it's not residential.
Okay, all right, yes, because all of
So it
ours
would be
are
in the townships, it would be all the local roads, which would be, some of them are gravel.
And do you chlorate them?
We brine them.
Brine them?
Yes,
How
we've
many,
gotten away
how
from
many
chloride.
times do you brine? How many times a year?
I believe with this program, we brine one time after this application. And then we have an option to, pay for additional brinings, I think up to 2 times, in those sections, if the communities are wanting to pitch in for that and
Now,
contribute.
is that our responsibility, the county's responsibility to brine them, or do the cities have to pay for their own applications?
If they want additional applications, we do have a brine program where we do brine certain locations throughout the county. But in addition to that program, yes, that would be on the responsibility of the communities to request that and to participate in the cost. Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner. General question, Brian.
Yes, sir.
What determines asphalt to concrete, concrete to asphalt? Who makes that determination when you,
As far as like a replacement and new construction?
right?
It kind of depends on the funding you have available, in the location, the type of traffic that's on it, the number of traffic, average daily traffic that travels a roadway. Obviously, concrete is more durable, It's got a higher lifespan, a longer lifespan, but it's got a higher initial cost as far as placement and construction. So if you do cost analysis, sometimes you want to pay a little bit less and do asphalt and then maintain it a little bit more earlier. But it's a less initial cost, or concrete, lasts a little longer, but ultimately you still have to do repairs, but it extends it out a little bit farther. We look at that at our various programs. A lot of stuff is already existing. We're not building too many new roads, which obviously we are with Garfield and some other roads that we recently done new. But it's just a life cycle cost and cost benefit analysis that's kind of
But in
done.
the long haul, concrete will last longer than asphalt.
Yes, correct.
So how many times do we repair asphalt versus busy traffic roads? An example, say it's Moravian. Okay, you've done that 2 or 3 times in the past.
Yeah, but that's a rehabilitation. So you mill off the surface of the asphalt, and then you put down new asphalt on top of that. So that's a resurfacing, that's a rehabilitation. It's a pavement repair and resurfacing. That's not a total remove and replace. So there's difference in the type of work that's done also. So on all of our rehabilitation projects, we're normally milling off and putting asphalt down because, there's been studies and stuff done with thin lift concrete segments, and that's not really the correct, appropriate use of that on these types of rehabilitation projects. But, certain communities, St. Clair Shores likes to do, have a lot of concrete roads. They like to do concrete patching. That's not going to last in the long run as long as concrete patching with an asphalt overlay, because you're capping over all those new patches plus all the old pavement that kind of secures the old pavement in place. It's just sometimes a preference of the community. Otherwise, it's a cost benefit analysis, how much funding you have and what you have available to move forward with.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
No other commissioners, please vote.
Commissioner Romano, I don't think yours came through if you'd like to voice vote.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you, Commissioner. Have a good evening.
Item number 7, correspondence, Macomb County Department of Roads update.
Motion to receive and file.
Support.
Please vote.
Hey, I'm getting better.
Item number 8, public participation. Anyone from the public, if you can hear me, you can speak on any item of your choice. Anyone from the public? Public participation is closed. Comments from any commissioner? Mr. Romano, comments from any commissioner?
I can sing?
What's the other option?
That's not a comment.
Like a whistle.
Item 10,
Motion to adjourn. Support.
please vote.